Welcome to the CXPod, where we aim to expand people's perception of customer experience management. We know that customer experience goes hand in hand with employee experience, and we believe that a broader and more holistic view might even replace terms like CX and EX with people experience or human experience.
Hello and welcome to the CXPod, guys.
Hello, Manette, and hello, Jill. Welcome to the CXPod.
Thank you. Hello to both of you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, all the way from America, as we say. That is great. Actually, we've had, I think, one more guest from the US before, but it's always so exciting to sort of be talking to the other side of the world. So Jill Raff, you are with us with, where is it that you're located again?
I'm in Austin, Texas.
In Austin, Texas. That's awesome. And Joanna, where are you at the moment?
I am in Norway. I'm in a town called Tønsberg.
All right. And I am myself in Oslo, where I normally am. And we are so excited to be here today with Jill Raff, who's going to be sort of trying our, well, not trying, but taking on our question challenge. But first of all, Jill, how are you? And welcome. And can you just let us know who is Jill?
It's a big question. Which part of me, right? Like we all are so many different parts. Gosh. Well, I'm thrilled to be here, and I love the use of tech. That here we are in 3 points on the globe, and we're together, and we're all sharing the same passion, and that lights me up. So that's super exciting. I am now in Austin, Texas. I'm originally from Georgia, the south of the U.S., Georgia. Gosh, I've been in 6 countries, covering 3 continents, multiple industries. So I feel that's also I feel very global. I feel like a citizen of the world. Gosh, don't even know where to begin other than I grew up in the restaurant industry, in a developing culture of McDonald's, and have realized now, looking back, I'm old enough to kind of look in the rearview mirror and see perspective on the multiple careers that I've had across industries, which have taken me to different parts of the world, and realized that the foundation, it all comes from those early years growing up in Georgia, with as I say, the developing culture of really growing up in the McDonald's family, in the culture and the experiences that I had there that really became a part of my DNA and influenced so much of what I've done.
Wow, that's really interesting. And I come from sort of the restaurant industry myself, not growing up in it, but at least that's where I started my career, and it's so much to learn from that. So I totally agree. But how could you sort of elaborate a little bit about the McDonald's? Like, how was your family working with what's the story?
Sure. So my parents and grandparents were early owner operators. Their first store was McDonald's National Store number 150 in 1959. And I was born in Ocala, Florida, because both my parents are from Chicago, and McDonald's gave them Ocala, Florida, which was basically horse country, as their first store. And then when I was an infant, they moved to Columbus, Georgia, and opened stores in Georgia, and then ultimately other areas around there, Tennessee, Alabama, and surrounding areas. And so it was the 4th year of the incorporation of the organization. And so I literally, my first job, I was 7. I have 2 older sisters who worked in McDonald's. They started in the shake. I don't know, making shakes. In those days, you would pump the syrup, you would measure out the ice cream, and then put it in the spindle. The spindles that Ray Kroc sold to the McDonald's brothers, the multi-mixers, which is how that whole started. I don't know if you saw the founder but a lot of that, even the layout of the store, is very true. Like, as I saw that, I was envisioning sitting on top of like the big phone. I'm really dating myself here, but sitting on top of the big printed phone books, because I was so little and I wanted to work. My sisters were working. I was too little. And so they gave me the job of answering the phone. And, I still remember it was good morning or good afternoon, whatever it was. Like, I learned now, looking back, the greeting, how much is packed into that. I
Yeah.
didn't realize, right? So it was, good morning, McDonald's is your kind of place. May I help you, please? And, McDonald's is your kind of place was the tagline at that time. May I help you? It was, how can I serve you? And please, being kind, like, so much into that little sentence. Now I realize, looking
Yeah.
back, but so that was why. And then I worked my way up through the different stations. And ultimately what I wanted to do was be on the register in the front and to greet people and to serve as many as I could. I was very competitive. And anyway, so that was truly my foundation.
I
I'm
love this
loving it.
story. Yeah, I love this story, and it must be fantastic for you, Jill, to sort of have that history in your backpack, so to say, and actually watch a company that has gone through so much change and transformation and growth that over all the years, and you've sort of been witness to all of it. It must be really, really a fantastic opportunity. I mean, a lot of the companies I've worked with, mind you, Tesco's in England, they still, of course, exist as well and are changing and growing. But I think your story beats it, definitely.
No competition. It's not. We all share similar experiences and gain same type of knowledge for sure.
Yeah.
So just a question, and we're already sort of looping into or diving into the rabbit holes, but so I have a history working with TGI Fridays, right? So when TGI Fridays, because McDonald's didn't even come to Norway until I must have been around 10, 12 even before I think the first McDonald's, at least in the area where I grew up. Maybe here and also they were here before, but I think in Bergen it must have been. This is like the west coast of Norway. So anyway, TGI Fridays came to Norway, or to Bergen at least, early 2000. And I was fortunate to get a job there. And I was so impressed because I came from, just pubs, or I had been working for a couple of years in a hotel in Spain. So speaking Norwegian, but helping Norwegian guests. There were a lot of Norwegian retirees that traveled to Spain during the winter because of the cold in Norway. But the way they sort of managed the hotel and the hotel bars and restaurant was, it was just based on whoever taught you what to do, right? But then I started with TGI Fridays, and they had this massive system, and they had the 7 steps to legendary service. They had it all put into sort of, their little boxes of how are things supposed to be. I remember, from meeting and greeting somebody at the door until serving their drinks, there should be this amount of minutes, and then you should serve the entrance, and then it was just everything was systemized, and I was so impressed because it worked. If you followed those 7 steps to legendary service, you were providing legendary service, so nothing was left to the coincidences. But then again, within this framework, we had the opportunity to have our personality and be ourselves, and I was just I fell in love with it. And then obviously there's probably pros and cons to that as well, but is that the same with McDonald's? And is that how you Americans do everything? Like, do you always have? It's so interesting.
Well, that's certainly the way a franchise would have to work, right? In order to maintain their brand identity and brand expectations, so that regardless if I go to McDonald's in Norway or in Japan or in London, regardless, or here in America, wherever you are, you're going in because of a past experience. In most cases, like McDonald's, yes, but often, even if it's something else, it's because of something you've heard, right? Or a review that you've read. And so the expectations need to meet the reality. And if in order to do that, you have to have consistency. And I think that's where McDonald's really thrived, is due to the consistency, whether it's the flavor profile or the design that you would see. Like there's so many elements that go into what makes up a brand and a culture in particular. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I
It's
like it.
very interesting. And but I'm going to take us further because with your vast background, Jill, and from many different countries, I'm interested also well, we're interested to find out, what would you say is your expertise today, your passionate?
So I think what is my differentiator is, while I see CX is important, and that's really been the focus for so many businesses, whether they practice it or not, is another story. But they ultimately they feel like they need to have the customer to, obviously the end customer, to make the profits meet what their expectations are to be a business. But I feel that in order to achieve great customer experience, you need to start in the inside. So I call it my inside out framework, which is EX to CX. So I believe you really need to start with your people. And as we discussed before, it doesn't matter whether you call them in the employee experience or the customer experience. It is, in fact, the human experience. We're all people. I feel like, we're people first. People are people first, and they're customers second. And so regardless, we need to really present that experience, whether we're now on the purchasing side or we're on the delivery side. And so my angle is really about focusing on your internal customer, your staff, creating that experience for them so that when they're happy, they're of course going to deliver a great experience to your customers, who will in turn be happy.
Yeah.
I mean, is it safe to say that, I was just thinking as you're talking, how this is all really about empathy and how we empathize for each other, right? So one day I'm the customer buying something from you, Joanna, and the next day it's turned around, and also because the amount of places where you can buy stuff. I was just thinking about this earlier, because in Norway, it would be Craigslist, I suppose. In the US, we have it's called Finn, so it means find, Finn.no, and I keep buying and selling stuff. And it's like one day you're the seller, next day you're the buyer. And the key word to all transactions is really the empathy. That's what gives you a good score.
I love that so much. And gosh, my brain, I'm firing. So where to start? I don't want to forget things. I'm gonna come back to my E3+1 formula. But I feel like, okay, the kind of woo-woo part of this for me, the why that people talk about, yes, my children and all those typical things. But for me, I think about the position and the importance of me delivering my message to as many people as possible, because I kind of do feel that this is a way to create a happier, more peaceful, loving world. And I know it's a big picture, but to your point, Mereta, we're customers, and many times a day, and then usually the deliverer of a service or product, and less times, but throughout the day as well. And so if we think about how many times in our day that we are transacting, and again, that word is a trigger word for me, but we can go into that after too. But how many times we have this interaction, because I do believe that we need to transform transactions into interactions. But when we have this exchange, it happens so often. And if we made each of those experiences one that was memorable, one that was personable, one that was a true human to human connection, then think of how much happier we would be. And when we're happy, our energy, our feelings, how we respond to people changes based on what's happening internally for us. And so we bring that to the picture. If someone's had a bad day at home or just left a fight, they're taking that to work. Or a customer, they're going to take it and they're going to often be nasty. But think about if we had this great exchange that switched that and made someone smile and feel good, then they're going to carry that on forward. And if we had that many times throughout the day, think about that. If every business created and ran their business in this way, we would no doubt have a happier world. How could you not? Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I remember, you remind me now, Jill, I remember when I was working for a company that I feel were brilliant at the employee experience rituals. I heard a man called Mo Goodvat. I don't know if you've heard him speak, but he has a mission in life to make 1 billion people happy. And he actually also drew up this sort of scientific timeline of every second. It's exactly what you're saying, Jill. You know, how every second influences how we feel. How it's almost thinking that you know, it's sort of explained that what happened yesterday is gone, and what's happening in the future, we don't know what's going to happen. So we have to nourish every single second and treat it well and with empathy, because that will have an influence on me. I have to care about that second, and it will have an influence on the other people I touch, because it will make a difference in their lives. And I think, you know, if everybody had that mentality, it would it would change the world.
Yeah. A friend of mine once said, "We only have now." And it's so powerful, right? Because it's so true, and it's so easy, but it's also so complicated, and it's so hard to remember when you're high on adrenaline or whatever it is, or, you know, your traffic jam, or you're late, or you're hungry. We keep forgetting, but all we have is now, really.
Yeah.
So
really
okay, another rabbit hole, guys. Well, I mean, this was covering your field of expertise quite well, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
So I mean, normally we would ask, since this is the customer experience sort of management focus, but I'm going to skip the question about who's responsible for CX in your company, because obviously, I mean, there's so many other things to dig into here. But I do want to ask you, though, just for the, you know, for the sake of being the CXPod, how would you sort of define customer experience management, or the customer experience? Like, you know, feel free to do it in the context of what we just talked about, but how would you sort of define, what do we mean when we say customer experience?
I think the general expectation when you hear customer experience has to do with the end customer, the purchaser, and what are they experiencing? What is their reality of the process? So whether it's something online, you know, how is the website experience working for them? How is the customer support working if there's a kink or a problem, or you need to return something, or maybe there's not a problem, maybe you just want more information to buy more. There are so many opportunities there that I think could benefit the bottom line in revenue for businesses if they thought of it in that way. Whether it's a physical, a brick and mortar place, right? It's who's greeting you at the door. What's your first experience? Is someone smiling? Do they greet you at all? Do they ignore you? What does the store look like? You know, physically, is there music playing? What are the colors? How does that affect your mood? If it's clothing or product, how is the design of the store? How is it placed on the shelves? Like, I think the Apple Store is a beautiful example of this. Like, I don't know about you, but I just feel so good in that space. It's clean, it's orderly, it highlights product. Even the things on their shelves are, you know, it's whether it's color coded or it's size, like there's a meaning, there's an order. It makes it easy. I think ease is very important. It makes it easy to find what we want, and even perhaps present things that we didn't think about. Like when you're at a grocery store, there's always the items on the checkout counter, or a drugstore, pharmacy, at least here in the US. I realize I'm speaking from that, but you know, the point of sale items that are right there. Oh, I forgot that. Let me pick that up as well. Right. So there are just so many elements that affect our experience to complete a purchase of whatever it is, whether it's a service or a product.
I like
Good
it.
explanation.
Yeah, and I like how you, because many people would say, yeah, it's all the sort of touch points that a customer experiences with you as a brand, right? But you just went through the list and sort of exemplified it, and I love that because, and I also, I can never go empty-handed out of an Apple store. It's crazy. All right, Joanna, we
All right.
want to move it on.
Yeah, I have another question. So what is capturing your attention out in the world today when it comes to customer experience?
Well, naturally, I kind of have this sixth sense that's thinking about the influence of the employee experience on that. But I truly believe it's not just my perspective, but since the pandemic, we can see within businesses that never before paid attention to the employee experience, always focusing on the end customer experience. And what's exciting for me is to see since the pandemic, businesses recognizing the importance of their people internally on the external experience. And so, whereas before it was really only focused on that end piece, I really feel like now you're seeing more and more of the human experience. It doesn't matter which side you're on. I do think that there's more focus on that.
Why is that, do you think? Like, what with the pandemic made that happen?
Because businesses realize that there were so many that were shut for so long, and then slowly it needed to stay, or those who needed to stay alive, but they they were kind of running in a skeletal situation, and they realized without their people they have no business. You might have a product or service to sell, but if you don't have great employees there who are committed to your success as well, who take pride and ownership in what they're doing, then you're never going to sell whatever it is you have anyway. I think the pandemic really highlighted the importance of your people who are willing to stick it out thick and thin and be there on behalf of the company.
Yeah.
And now with labor shortages, I think that's one of the biggest issues that we're having. And I think as customers, we experience that there's not enough help, whether it's on the floor of a retail store, whether you're in a restaurant and they tell you, you see all these tables open, you see a few servers, and they're like, well, it's going to be a 20-minute wait. And you're like, why is it a 20-minute wait? There's all these tables open. Yeah, but we don't have anyone to serve you. Right. Like we don't have enough help. And so I think businesses are finally recognizing that they are nothing without their people. And they need those employees.
Yeah.
So
I think as well that it also it woke like that maybe COVID perhaps woke a instinct that we already of course had within us, but it made it more real that we need to protect each other. And of course, as a business leader, you also need to protect your business. And to protect your business, you need to protect your people so that they can make your business possible.
Bingo.
Yeah.
100%. I agree with that, Joanna.
Yeah, protecting. Yeah, I like it. So, and this is a really good segue into the next question, which is, what is the most significant? Yeah, I can't even speak anymore. What is the most significant challenge that companies face today? Concerning or regarding being customer centric or having a customer centric focus.
So, from my experience and everyone I'm speaking with, clients, it's labor shortage. Labor, like when they're like, what's the top 10 most important challenges we have, or the most important thing that we need? Labor.
So is it the labor or is it the competency of the people? Is it people shortage, or is it having not the right people?
That's an excellent question, and I think they're intertwined. I don't think you can separate them because of the labor shortage and not enough people. businesses are willing to do basically warm body hiring, right? Like it's anyone, you have a heartbeat, we need you on the floor, bring you in. But they don't take the time not only to train. So I believe too, you don't just train your people. I mean, what do you mean you don't train your people? Well, yes, of course they have to be task trained, but a monkey you could train a monkey to smile, right? You could do it. That's not going to differentiate your business. You're going to be a commodity at that point. What makes the difference is the human interaction. And so in order to do that, I believe you need to not train your people, but you need to educate your people and really teach them who you are, what your values are, what does your brand stand for, how should, like what you referred to before with TGI Fridays, although unfortunately my experience in the restaurant doesn't seem to uphold a lot of those things, but that comes with also accountability and leadership. But it's about making sure that people understand and know, and that they're on board, and that they are aligned with the same values that your company has in order to deliver that brand expectation. So I think the challenge is twofold. It's getting bodies, and the compromise that companies make because they don't have enough people there, and then they feel like they don't have enough time to actually educate them the way they should be taught. And many people, again, depending upon the size of the company and if it's independent or whatever, it's all over the place. But for the smaller independent businesses, they're working in their business instead of strategically on it, and how do they grow it, and how do they make sure these other things happen. They lose that time, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I mean, when you point at it, it's who if you are a warm body hiring, like if you were hired just because of being a warm body, you wouldn't be happy, right? You wouldn't be sort of succeeding. Maybe 1 out of 10 would, like by chance or just by coincidence, because they would have the right attitude, or there would be a fit, or a match. But all the rest of them would probably be unhappy and miserable. And then, like you say, of course that's going to affect the customer. And I think it's interesting because it's like you say, before the pandemic we could say, oh, this place has such bad service, but now you can't really say that, because you see it's so obvious that it's not that they don't have service, it's just that they don't have people, they don't have enough hands. So
and capacity and resources and the knowledge to be able to serve at the level that we would like.
Right. I think at least a small part of solving that challenge is making sure that when you hire, that you're hiring people who are aligned with your company's core values, your vision, your mission. And when you do that, half the battle is there, because then the mentality is the same. The work ethic is going to be there. The appreciation of being a part of something that's a team, like you have to instill all that. And then once you do, then you can just go to the task training, which is all the skills and the things that that you talked about before, Merete, with the TG, with the book, with the system, right? Like, so there's a system which seems very cold, but actually when you inject that empathy and the human element into that, then that's when that comes alive. And that's why I feel that's so successful.
Is that something that you we didn't sort of, I know what your expertise, we know what your expertise is, Jill, but is this something like that you do, that you work with training or helping companies with the employee experience?
Yes, I do. So I speak, I do workshops. I have a hybrid online course that is combines both material that's delivered online, videos, action guides, educational material, combined with different levels depending upon the investment that someone wants of their time, and not just financially, but that comes along with kind of coaching, advising along the way. And I write as well. I have a column for Nation's Restaurant News about company culture. It's called Ask Jill, Develop Your Company Culture. And it's all around, it's an advice column format, but it's all around any aspect of what problems companies may have in their culture, which includes both EX and CX.
So you're like the strategic advisors, sort of, what do you call, alibi, or not alibi, but alias to Carrie Bradshaw in Sex and the City, because you have your own column. That's awesome. I love that. So you mentioned earlier, and I think this is probably a good place to pick a little bit, in your brain about, because you say you have your method and you have, your 3 E's and what?
Yeah, 3E plus 1.
3E plus 1. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So the first E I touched on, which was educate. That we need to educate our people, not just train them. Then that's just very broad. The second E is engage, because again, the model that I grew up with was witnessing, seeing my father there engaging, shoulder to shoulder, coming in. So a quick story: growing up, whenever we were going out to dinner, we'd pass by one of our stores. If my dad saw a light out, or he saw like a line of customers or trash on the lot, anything that like he felt was not right, he would like pull into the parking lot and say, I'll be right back. Well, there we were, 20, 30 minutes, very impatient, three young children, my mom, like, where is he? So I'd go in, see where he was, and inevitably he'd, have his sleeves rolled up and he'd be working the fry station, or, on the front support on the cashier, whatever was needed to get the customers served quickly, and of course always with a smile. And so it was like, just no matter what these things were, it was really reinforced that whatever's important, whatever's needed, you engage, you're there. I've had people I've interviewed who worked with him and said, your dad never asked us to do anything he wasn't willing to do. So that engagement as a leader is super important, because you're modeling the behavior that you want to see from them, and you're showing them that there's no hierarchy when it comes to that. You're all one team. So that's engage. Third one is entrust. So if you've educated properly, you've engaged the way you need to, and trust comes naturally. And that's where it really gives you back the time in your business to work on your business strategically, because now you can trust that they're going to serve and make decisions independently, because you've empowered them to make the decisions that need to happen. No micromanaging. You're able to trust that. And the plus one, you're going to love this one, because you teed it up, is empathy.
Yeah.
The fourth E is empathy. And it's so important, because the first 3 E's will never be as effective if it's not delivered with empathy. And I like to, with a food background, besides McDonald's, I have a culinary background, and I love food and cooking. But it's like, if anyone who cooks, it's like the salt, right? You always pre-season with salt, and it's not, you don't want to taste the salt, but it highlights, it concentrates those other flavors, those other things. So when you add empathy into those across the first 3 E's, you're actually going to do the same thing. You're going to highlight and bring out the best in your people and all across the board.
Yeah. It's amazing. And I mean, I love and trust, just because we've talked so much about the podcast, or in the podcast about mandate, right? And it's probably one of the ugliest words I know. We keep talking about we need to give our people mandate to make the right decisions, but you turned it around and sort of, we will trust that we have given you the training that you need to be able to make those decisions on your own. And it's, again, back to being the employee. How happy wouldn't you be working with that sort of responsibility, but also sort of empowerment, instead of being just a warm warm body running around my place, right? So I can't stop imagining that warm body running around.
I love that. That's why I call it warm body management.
Yeah. No, it's so interesting, and it's I mean, Joanna can probably see it on my face as well. It's really, really resonating a lot with what's our passion and how we feel things should be done when we work with these topics. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Jill, sorry, was it your question, Manetta?
You go, Joanna. It doesn't matter. It's our podcast. We can do what we want.
I wanted to turn around. We've got a question, but I want to turn it around a little bit because it actually says, from your perspective, what are the key attributes of a customer-centric company? But from your perspective, what are the key attributes of an employee-centric company?
I believe the key attributes are answering the needs of what we hear from employees. You always hear about voice of the customer, but the voice of the employee is just as important. And what we find is they want to feel significant. Going back to the human experience, right? Just as a human being, everyone wants to be heard, not just be listened to, but truly feel like they're heard. They want to feel significant. They want to feel that they're a part of something bigger, that their voice, that what they believe actually can be employed, pun, double entendre there, because it can be employed in the business. And, I think it's like when you have children and they talk about wanting to get them to eat other foods that they don't really want to try. If you engage them in the process of the cooking or the decision making of what you're serving, then they're invested in that outcome. And so the same kind of analogy works, I believe. And then of course, a living wage, my gosh, there are just so many where they expect the customers to supplement largely, as with the tips, expecting your customer to pay for your prices to start with, and basically then cover your employee expense too. I have a problem with that, but so a strong wage to live on, their voices to be heard, benefits, growth opportunities within the company. Again, whether it's educating them, giving them life skills, not just task-oriented skills that serve the job that they're there to do, but actually ones that help them grow as a human being, that help them grow, that skills that you're not afraid that they could take elsewhere and apply, right? I think those things are so important, and people will stay with you longer if they feel that you have invested in them and that there is room to grow.
Yeah. And I think that if you get that experience, even when you leave the company, anybody who's had that experience will then create positive word of mouth about being either a customer or an employee within the company. So
yeah, that's so true. And I even felt it. And it's probably like 20 years ago since I worked in TGI Fridays, right? But when I'm telling this story and how overwhelmed I was by the system and the tools they had like stories of they had like little tales that they would tell to sort of exemplify how they would have their culture, and still 20 years later, when you say that you're not that impressed with what they do today, it sort of hurts a little bit. You know what I mean? Still, because it's so sort of it's so. I can't find the English word for it, but it's just so deep in me. It became a part of me, and the way I understood what treating customers well was all about. And I also love the fact, when you point out teaching your employees life skills, not just the skills they need to do the job, but actually, training them for life outside of work as well. That's when the magic starts to happen. And can you imagine, all the brands that they miss out on these opportunities because they don't treat their people right?
And it's so simple. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't cost them more. I mean, it should be a given. And I love hearing what you say about your experience of starting in the restaurant industry. That's the way I feel as well. Like when things happen, it's like, oh no, like that's so against what. But that I think it just really highlights the opportunities, um, both to impact people and to make that happier world that we talked about earlier, but also to influence the customer experience as a result of that. In fact, that's why my tagline is transform employees into advocates and customer magnets. So to your point, what you just said, Joanna, right? Like it's about them off the internal, right? The employees to also become that voice, to be really proud, like you, a perfect example. You have this pride of what you experienced, and as a result you're going to draw in more customers.
Yeah. And I mean, I can't think of any greater ambassador for rituals than Joanna. You keep talking about rituals. No, but again and again. And I'm not even trying to make fun of you, even if it's a little funny, but it's because that's the impression they made on you, right? Because you thrived there. You were able to be you. You were able to provide value. You were able to make a difference. And if
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
And they actually followed very much of what the things you've been talking about, Jill. They educated, they had a philosophy that, you probably will not stay working here, but what happens is when you come in and start with your backpack, we want that to be fuller when you leave. That's the mentality that they have. And I truly believe that's what's made them successful on the customer front, because of their focus on the employee experience.
I love hearing more and more stories to know that there are actually companies out there who are in fact doing that.
Yeah.
Now, I want to know, Jill, because you mentioned this actually in your previous answer to the previous question, but voice of the customer programs, or even voice of the employee programs, what are your take on those? Are they, are they here to stay? Should we throw them out? What's your take on it?
I think they're more important now than ever. I think the key is that we need to actually use that data, not just collect it, and do nothing with it. And especially as the voice of the employee, because they are your front line to your customer. So they are a huge wealth of information if we only took the time to gather that information, to ask them the questions, to hear what they have to say, and then implement accordingly based on the response that they have. You want to know as soon as possible if someone is unhappy at work, because the turnover problem is a real problem. And there's so much competition today. It is very easy with the labor situation as it is for an employee to leave and go somewhere else. Add into that the populations that are now, the majority of those as employees have a different mindset. It used to be for the baby boomers, you were kind of taught, you go to college, you get a job, you stay, you develop, you stay in that one company. And it was very rare if you would probably have more than 2 or maybe 3, but usually it's 1 or 2 companies on your resume. Today, with the, the millennials and the next generations, they don't, it's almost expected. They don't think twice about leaving a company. They don't like something, they don't like the way something felt that day, they're like, I am out of here. I can find a job like that, right? So I think more than ever we need to listen when we hear what is it that's important to them, what's going to make them stay. In fact, it's not just about money. Statistics show that people will even go above and beyond what's expected for less money when you treat them like a human being, when you listen to them. And so that voice is, I think, more important than ever.
That's such a good input, Jill. I think that I was just discussing exactly the same thing today as well, that we're collecting data more than ever and we're just not using it for anything. And I think that is also extremely alarming when it comes to employee feedback. I mean, if you get responses that your employees are unhappy, or that there's maybe something they're working with, a tool that they're working with to help them get their jobs done is more of a hindrance than a help. I mean, that will irritate them enough to think, you know what, I can't do my job well enough, I'll get a job somewhere else. So, you know, if you're not responding to that kind of feedback, then I'm sorry, I think that you don't deserve to keep those employees anyway.
Yeah. I mean, we do see in all sort of research around why people leave their job. It's really, you know, I don't remember the exact amount of percentage, but it's always because of the leader or how they feel treated at work, right? It's hardly ever because of the tasks or because of, you know, it's basically because of the way their superiors make them feel. So, yeah, I love Voice of the Customer and Voice of the Employee programs, and I love mixing them together and trying to find the correlations between, you know, to see that actual correlation between happy customers and happy employees. And we see, I mean, especially when we documented this in one of the Norwegian CX Network gatherings, where we looked at a company who invested more in training their employees. So the employees were happier, and shortly after, the customer NPS also arrived. So it's actually possible to prove it.
Love that. Thank you.
So, and then what has hit, and I'm just going to take this one to Joanna because now we're so deep into it. Voice of the Customer programs have sort of been through a transformation, you know, lately, and we see because of technology, right? So, in your opinion, and this, you know, answer it from a CX or an EX or both perspective, but in what way do you see that technology has transformed the customer or employee journey or just experience, and what do you believe for the future? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Like, what is your take on how technology is, you know, coming at us?
It is coming at us in like whiplash speed. It's interesting too, when I go to conferences, the amount of tech and their areas and more and more apps growing to support the customer experience and the employee experience. And I think it's fantastic. I think, though, we have to be careful that a lot of times companies replace that instead of focusing on developing their people as humans. And because it's sexy, right? Like, tech is it's trendy, it's now, it's cool, and we all enjoy it. But I think we have to be really careful that it's used for the end goal of a easier, frictionless experience for both sides. And the same could be said, you know, whether it's ease of ordering. Now we see all these kiosks, like, how is the tech running behind it to make sure that there are less clicks along the way when you're ordering? Or if you have a problem and you're dealing with customers, you know, service, customer support online, or even if it's a phone call, how many times are you transferred and rerouted? Which is, oh my gosh, that's enough to like kill any business. I will just run from any company that I've had multiple experiences, knowing that in order to finally speak to a human or to deal with something, that I have to go through all that. I have to weigh out like my time versus the end goal. It's exhausting and frustrating.
And all we have is now, right? So you don't have time for that.
There you go. That's exactly right. All we have is now. So I think technology is really crucial and amazing because it's helping automate and speed up the repeat procedures. And there's no reason to waste human energy and resources on that. And so when you use tech in that way, you're freeing up the human asset to then create more personal human experiences on both sides. And so I believe that's the way tech is best used whether it is for the customer's journey or the employee's journey.
So a specific question to that, just because I remembered, you were talking all the way back when we started the episode, you were talking about the old shaker, how you made shakes the old way. So what is your take on the way the shakes at McDonald's are being made today then? Because that's technology right there, right?
It is. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, obviously it's fast. It's pre-made and you just pull a lever and it comes out. And I think the key with that is, again, from my food side of me, that little other part of me, thinking of texture, of flavor, the color. So then you have to go a few layers deeper from wherever you're you're buying the product or creating the product with your partner in that, to make sure that you get the right recipe, that you have the right balance of sweetness to whatever it is, the right texture you need. So, but absolutely, why spend the time? While it was fun when I was little, but truly it's a beautiful experience. Thank you for bringing that one up as an example of wasted human time. Yeah.
Yeah. Wasted warm body effort, right?
Exactly.
I love how we've just sort of developed, or we haven't really developed, but we're stealing all your terms now. We're going to be using them. So within a few months now, everyone in the Nordics will be talking about warm body hiring. And,
it's good. As long as you attribute it to me, that's cool. I love it.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's the Raff way of saying and doing things.
Yes.
I think our next question, Jill, we've talked a lot about already, because it's what role do you think employee experience and company culture play in delivering top tier customer experience? So is there anything that you would like to elaborate on that we haven't already touched?
I don't think so. I think my tagline really encompasses it all, which is transforming employees into advocates and customer magnets.
Yeah.
And, I think it says it all right there.
Yeah. Another question, it is one of our questions as well that I'm sort of changing a little bit, because we actually asked the question if you were the one trying to secure funding to, what should I say, work with. This would normally be for customer centric improvement, but now I'm thinking employee centric improvements. What would be the first thing that you would do to secure funding if you were working within a company and you want to secure funding for more training, or education, sorry, not training, for activities that will grow empathy, engagement? How would you go about securing funding for this from top management?
I think I would think about it kind of, Meretta, which what you were saying, that looking at where's it coming from? Ultimately, the leadership, right? You have to set those examples. You have to have them understand and appreciate where your strength is, what's going to create that culture, where is it going to have its influence on your end customers to then bring in the funding. And I think when you show them the example that you mentioned at this conference, where they actually increased their NPS score as a result of investing in their people, and how that employee experience influenced the ultimate customer experience, which will bring in more customers, repeat visits, and new customers as a result of reviews and word of mouth. I think that's a perfect example. When you show them concretely the impact, then why would they not? I think you're going to have much more investment dollars being willing to put into creating that when they know that that's going to have an impact and an ultimate success of their business.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's like the good old ROI, right?
Good old ROI.
And also, I love, this was another guest, I can't remember who said it, we were talking about, but how we would sort of show them what the effect it had on the customer. And can you imagine, like, if you go to the CFO and you go like, look, welcome to work. Like, have everyone clapping when the CFO comes in the door and just like, we welcome you. As our CFO, we're so happy to have you at work today. How can we sort of help you do your job better? You know, if you could exemplify that for them in a less tacky way, I suppose also it would be easier to secure funding, because you have to feel it on your own body, right?
Yes.
So,
Such
but
a
it's
great
hard
point.
to, and it's even harder, I think, it's harder to put yourself in the customer's shoes, because you never know who's actually going to buy your product. Well, you do have the personas and user groups and all of that, but with your employees, it should be a little easier. I would say it should be a little easier, because you share the same space, you share the same culture, you share the same environment. So you should be able to sort of make your CEO or CFO or whoever C you're dealing with understand what it is like to be the majority of the employees. And I think hold up the mirror, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And you
Just
yeah, and within your own company, you know, you should be able to see what is the churn rate of our employees. You should be able to find out yeah, well, of course, it's satisfaction scores, but also that was a point, yeah, that you know you can actually bring qualitative
yes.
feedback into management, and when you show qualitative feedback, it can be very personal, because this is somebody you've probably talked with in the canteen.
Exactly.
Perhaps this is somebody that you know, and when you get qualitative feedback from your employees about how they experience work with you, if it is a negative, then surely that must have an impact on the management.
Yeah.
Yeah, you great points, and you just triggered a thought that I had. So I'm a licensed facilitator for Type Coach, which is like a personality. They use Myers-Briggs, but it's delivered in a very user-friendly, different videos and different way. And so basically it's saying exactly it's a tool to help do what you're saying, Joanna, because we need to speak to people in their language and in the way, like Mereta, like what's gonna resonate for them. So people as a CFO, of course, is thinking numbers, they're analytical, they want evidence, they want facts. So the emotional aspect may not impact them. The human element will. So I do think, like, same thing when using their names and smiling, making them feel important.
Yeah.
Hopefully will make them realize that everybody, as human beings, we all want to feel important, right? But then backing that up with information that's going to be speaking their language. So that there's a book, I forgot I was looking to see if I have it here, the author's name. I'm terrible with those names, but it's How Do We Speak So That Others, again, I'm probably messing the gist of the title is How Do We Speak So That Others Can Hear Us, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and I think it's speaking their language, kind of like the 5 love languages. It's the same thing. It's not how we receive information, it's how do others receive information, make sure we're delivering it so they can hear what we're saying.
Yeah, I think I actually know what book you're talking about, but I can't either sort of bring out the title. But we could probably look that up later and even put it in the show notes. We are getting close to rounding up, but there is one final question that I also want to twist around a little bit. So you can actually answer it from both a CX and an EX perspective, but I would love to hear if you have any examples of any sort of company or organization or brand that exemplifies great CX or EX, like who's done this and sort of made it and is working for them.
So I can think of 2 quick examples that I had recently. One is Amazon, even though people see it, as this big, terrible giant. They've clearly trained their people well and educated them on their culture and the feeling they want their customers to walk away with. So in short, I had this experience where I bought something, needed to return, whatever it was not something that they normally allow for an exchange or return, whatever it was, I've forgotten. The crux of it, and that again, we walk away with not what exactly they said, but how we feel, right? What they did. And so I mentioned that I was buying it for my son's birthday. And when we get to the end of the call, of course solved what I wanted, right? He did what I needed. But beyond that, which would have been great, but the extra cherry on the top was he said to me, "Can you do me a favor?" And of course, my cynical brain from past experiences coming to this scenario is, okay, he's going to ask me for a review to help him out, right? No, he said to me, "Would you do me a favor and wish your son a happy birthday for me?" Oh my gosh. Like, how fantastic. Like, it's so human, so caring. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And just yesterday, I actually had an incredible experience with Apple and told the senior manager that I'm going to use him as an example from now on, because he went above and beyond to solve the problem that I'm having. And he said to me, "I am so happy that we were able to have this one-on-one conversation. And this is why I like to speak to the people and not have them go through other processes or surveys, whatever it is, because I can help you in a way that otherwise I couldn't. And I was able to hear your story. I was able to understand what you're going through. And as a result, I want to make sure you are more than compensated for what you've been through." And like, I felt cared for, right? Like, so hearing that from him was absolutely amazing. And that's what more companies need to do.
Yeah, I just remembered a story when you mentioned your son, and this was when my kids were smaller, right? We went, I think it was a Starbucks actually. I'm not sure, but let's give it to Starbucks for today. So we ordered hot chocolate. So it's winter, it's cold in Norway, and you know, one of the things we do in the winter is we go somewhere and we have hot chocolate with cream on top. So they are toddlers, like, I don't know, 3, 4, maybe a little around that age. So my son tips his cup over, or probably it was my daughter because she's the clever one. But anyway, a cup is tipped over, and the content is just all over the place. Now, obviously, I have one kid with their hot chocolate intact, and I have one kid without it. And the employer, or the not the employer, but the guy working at the shop, comes running and first of all starts to clean it up and making sure nobody was burned. And then it's like, "We're going to bring you a new hot chocolate because," and I was like, "That's so nice of you. And of course we will pay for it." And he's like, No. I know how hard of a time you're going to have trying to explain to your 3-year-old that you cannot have another one. You know, that's just something that you cannot explain to a kid. So we want to provide you with that because we want you to have a good time. So it's just, again, it's about the empathy thing, right? And I think, I don't even know if this person had this in their job description, if they were even, you know, speaking of mandates to do so. But the fact that they did made me, if not a big ambassador for Starbucks, but at least, you know, I'm going to go back to that place. And we did with the kids because it's just how things work. So I love it when they do, you know, that's what they do. They do it with the kids, and then they know they have you for the rest of your life. You're going to be in law.
Exactly.
Jill, what do you think? Was that because they were educated and not trained, or employed because they have those values within them?
That's it. I think that goes along with hiring with aligned values.
Yeah.
It certainly wasn't just a warm body, that's for sure.
Exactly.
I'm loving that. And I have this McDonald's slogan. I don't know if it's the same in the US, but here it's "I'm loving it." So I'm even hearing that do. I'm loving it.
Exactly.
All right, ladies, we have to wrap up. Thank you so much, Jill, for taking the time to talk to us all the way from Austin. Joanna?
Yeah.
Last famous words?
Yeah, thank you, Jill. Thank you, Marietta, for a fantastic episode. And if anybody wants to get in touch with you, Jill, how do they do that?
They can write directly, jill@jillraff.com, or check out my website, which is jillraff.com. It is largely restaurant focused because that's where I created my first niche, but I just finished speaking to a dental conference, for example. So truly my principles, the concepts are industry agnostic. It transcends all industries because it is about a human experience. So it doesn't matter what you're selling or where you are. So the website will hopefully support that. And that is just my name, jillraff.com.
And if anybody wants to follow you on LinkedIn, I'm sure that's also an option, right?
Yes, please do. That's my biggest platform, and it does have my name, but it also goes by my title, which is EX2 CX. So kind of playing on the B2B, B2C bit. So it's EX2 CX Advisor.
Yeah, we'll make sure to put that in the show notes as well.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining. Thanks you all. I cannot speak anymore. Thanks to everyone who's listening and even watching maybe. You have been listening to the CXPod, and we'll see you later.
Thank you for listening to the CXPod. If you want to reach us, you can always find us on LinkedIn, and please remember to follow us on Spotify and leave a review of what you think.